I just finished my first original recording, which was an instrumental track called Wilderness Way. And I was moving to a new job in Aberdeen, about to move house, set up a new studio in Aberdeen, and I decided that the new studio I wanted to write songs. It wasn't just about doing cover versions and instrumentals. I wanted to write my own original material. But songwriting's really hard and I didn't know where to start. I was living between two locations at the time. Although I was working in Aberdeen, we still hadn't sold the house in Guildford, so I came back down to Surrey for Christmas. I was invited round by a P&G friend of mine, Steve Donaldson, to go out with him and a few of my ex-P&G colleagues for a meal, and then to come back to his house and stay over. So we had a great night, and we ended up drinking whiskey into the small hours of the morning. In that usual drunken fashion, we started talking about musical influences. Now, it turned out that Steve had grown up roughly at the same time as me. Steve told me that he liked the new wave of British heavy metal, which I was also a massive fan of, particularly Iron Maiden and Def Leppard. We also liked the classic rock bands like Whitesnake, Rainbow, Thin Lizzy, and solo projects like Gary Moore. And at that point, Steve happened to mention that he'd written some songs when he was 16 years old. So he went upstairs and he brought back down the original handwritten lyrics that he'd written when he was 16 years old, nearly 20 years before. When I read the lyrics, there was two songs that really stuck out. The first was Halloween, and the second was Sphinx, which both ended up on the album. Steve did me a massive favour because he'd already done the hard part, which was writing the lyric and the story of the song. When I read his lyrics, I could immediately conjure up ideas in my head for what the music was going to sound like, particularly with Halloween. When I eventually moved to Aberdeen and got the studio up and running, one of the first projects I started on was Halloween. I thought, I've got to do something with that and turn it into a song. The song started with the drums, because that's the foundation of any track. I had to find a groove that would fit the lyric. And I ended up buying this CD of pre-recorded drum tracks. Now there's over 130 of them on this album with different musical styles. And one of them really stuck out because I felt that it had a really good groove and it felt like it was something that I could build a track upon. The song's all about the living dead, zombies. Now, zombies don't move around in marching time, so it had to be at a pace that you could imagine zombies moving along to. It has a bit of a swing to it, so it gives you license to have the guitars moving around as well. You don't want a stagnant, static rhythm. So that was the foundation for the entire song. So I decided the song was going to be in E, and E minor in particular, because I wanted that dark, moody feel to the song. By firmly establishing that the song was in E by playing the really most powerful E power chord you can in the first position with all 6 strings, which is this one. It's called the E5 chord. A major chord normally has the 1st, 3rd and 5th degrees of the major scale. Power chord has purely the 1st and 5th. It's missing the 3rd because it's the 3rd gives the scale its character. By playing the power chord, it's kind of neutral and it means you can go anywhere. Now the first guitar part was to the left and it was using a Stratocaster like this one, so that combination of single coil pickups in the bridge plus these open chords really creates that resonant sound that's critical to that creating the tension at the beginning of the song. The second guitar I used was a Jackson SL2 Super Strat, but this James Tyler Variax has exactly the same characteristics. So I followed a very, very similar approach. I start off with the E5 power chord, but not in the open position, further up the neck. Now, it's not as ringy as the Stratocaster, so the two fit well together. This is almost like the dark foundation with the Strat ringing out the other notes on top. So that's the first chord, is the E5 power chord. Move down 2 frets and we get the D5 power chord. I want to add an A to that chord and I get that really dark, powerful D5 over A. So now, let's put it all together. But that is a great foundation for everything else to sit upon. Keep it simple at the beginning. It establishes the groove, it establishes the key, that we're in E, but so far we haven't used any of the notes from the E minor scale. So how do we know it's an E minor? It is the bass that's playing out the notes of the scale. So the bass has all of the melody, and I thought that was quite refreshing, and it works incredibly well on a Music Man Stingray because it has a very piercing sound that cuts through a mix. So now we're back to the Super Strat, which is the guitar I used for the lead guitar section in the intro. The drum track for the verse is exactly the same as the intro. Guitars are playing the same parts, the E5 power chord down to the D5 over A power chord and backwards and forwards between the two. It sets a really nice rhythmic and tonal structure or foundation. Now the only thing that's doing something slightly different in the verse is the bass, pushing the song forward by using notes from the E minor scale. So that's effectively what's going on. If you put all of that together, it is a great foundation to sit beneath the vocal. It allows the vocal lots of space, and because you've got that powering guitar, you've got the E minor scale being picked up with the bass, it makes it very easy to sing over because I can hear all the notes of the scale. I just have to find which ones I want to sing along. So for the vocal part of the performance, it was really all about finding a vocal melody that would complement what was already going on.
31st woods are black. The hellhounds howl in their packs. Drunk with fear, I'll start to sweat. I know it's me they're out to get. The silence is shattered by the screech of a now. The animals cower as the demons prowl. Pleading for mercy, my voice is hoarse. War around me is an evil force.
Now, this is one of the things that appealed to me about this particular drum track. There's one section in it where it jumps into double time, which means it's twice as fast. Now, if you think of the lyric, it starts off with the living dead walking very, very slowly. Then it moves up a notch and we start talking about the hellhounds. Now, they don't move very slowly, they move fast. So this tempo change mirrors what's actually happening in the lyrics that Steve wrote all those years ago. So let's just listen to the difference in the drum track from the end of the verse into the chorus. So this is the half-time part. Exactly the kind of sound I was looking for. I wanted the bass to be pushing the rest of the instruments. So the bass is also upping the tempo and now playing 16th notes and picking out the notes of the chords that the guitars are going to be playing over the top. But it's also this driving rhythmic foundation that the other parts will sit upon. Works great. The drum and the bass are doing what they really should. They're providing a rhythmic bedrock that's really pushing the song forward and means that the other guitars can maybe sit back and do something a little bit more interesting. This is classic dual guitar playing. The trick here is to have point and counterpoint so that each guitar is playing something different to each other. It's pointless having two guitars if all they do is mirror each other's parts. What you want to do is to have parts that intertwine and play off of each other. So when one guitar is moving down, the other guitar is moving up. When one guitar is at the bottom of the neck, the other one is at the top. There's one part in the middle where they meet on the same chord, and it's almost like they're just crossing over and passing in the night, and it works incredibly well. So let's start by putting the first guitar part down for the chorus. So for the right hand guitar, we're going to do the complete opposite of what we've done in the left hand channel. Rather than starting at the bottom of the neck, we'll start at the top of the neck. The riff that this guitar is playing is a little bit more piecemeal. It begins by riffing around the notes from the E minor chord. This is the first time the guitar in the song actually is using chords that are directly minor. But I'm not playing full chords, I'm just playing dyad chords using two notes at a time. Then I play a descending pattern of two notes settling on the C major chord at exactly the same time the left hand guitar is picking out a C major chord. From the C it's just up to D. Let's hear it in the mix. Now all the backing tracks are down. Let's listen to what the vocal is doing in the chorus. And again, the vocal is mirroring everything else that's happening. The tension in the voice increases, the pace increases, and the tonality starts to push a little bit harder because we're supposed to be running from the hellhounds. So you kind of need a vocal that's really powerful and animated that tries to get some of that anxiety and fear.
Halloween, the day of death, the fire licks up from the devil's mouth. Halloween, the night insane, living dead are walking again.
The tempo of the guitar solo is exactly the same as the chorus, so the first solo is quite blisteringly fast because we're at that really high tempo where we're running away from the hellhounds. It's basically the same chords that are used in the verse actually, at a faster tempo but with a more punchy rhythmic dynamic. So let's have a go at playing the solo. The musical backing for the second guitar solo drops back to the lower tempo of the verse. it's two guitars playing the same melody, a natural fourth interval between the two guitars. A technique used by many of the classic rock bands, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Thin Lizzy. You've probably heard this more times than you can ever imagine. Let's add the second guitar part to the duet. The second half of the song is just repetitive chorus, verse, chorus, and then the big finale. And all the way through it, all the instruments are getting louder in volume, getting a little bit more percussive and a bit more pushy to try and capture this idea that we're in a chase, and as the chase gets near the end, it gets more and more energetic. That's really the mood I was trying to capture in the second half of the song. But it's effectively using the same chords and melodies that were played in the verses and choruses in the earlier sections. The vocal gets more aggressive, it gets louder. I'm really having to push the air from my lungs to get the volume and to hit some of these really quite high notes. And I think it culminates quite well as you get to the final line of the final chorus and then into the finale. It's almost like the pinnacle in terms of volume and aggression and fear that's coming through in the vocal part.
In the grass, my soul is drained. Covered in blood, my clothes are stained. My mind is ravaged by my foe. As I'm slowly pulled down below. Halloween, the day of death. The fire leaks up from the devil's breath. Halloween, the night insane. The living dead are walking again. Walking again. Halloween, the day of death. The fire leaks up from the devil's breath. Halloween, the night insane. The living dead are walking again.
There were two other songs in the charts at that time that had very similar themes. One was Michael Jackson's Thriller, and the other was Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast. Both of those tracks had spoken intros, and they were introduced by two of the kings of horror, Vincent Price and Christopher Lee. So I didn't want to rip that off, but I thought it would be nice if there was a narrative at the end that was almost a cheesy take on some of those intros. So that's where the big ending for the song comes from.
The living dead are walking your streets tonight.
That's the story behind Halloween and some insight into how it was written and performed. The next video is the second song that Steve gave me the lyrics for, and it's called Sphinx. If you want to see more, please make sure that you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to produce videos for every single song that was on the Hell and Back album. There will be a performance video for each, and then a follow-on behind the music explaining how the song was written and showing how the parts were actually performed.